Stop for a moment. Take a deep breath. Now, look at your own life as if it were a movie you are watching from the outside. If someone narrated your story up to this point, what would be the tone of that narrative? Would it be that of someone who lived with courage, who went after what they wanted, who dared, even when fear screamed to retreat? Or would it be that of someone who stayed safe, comfortable, and little by little stopped living without even realizing it? It's hard to face this question, but it is necessary, because perhaps your greatest fear is not death. Perhaps your greatest fear is, in fact, truly living. When I say truly living, I'm not talking about merely surviving, paying bills, and fulfilling commitments. I'm talking about feeling life pulsating in every decision, allowing yourself to make choices that may not work out, but that are yours. I'm talking about facing the risk of disappointment, of getting hurt, of losing. Because even if all that happens, you will have still lived. The truth is that many of us spend our lives avoiding risks, postponing dreams, protecting ourselves from any possibility of pain. And the price we pay is high, a kind of slow, silent, invisible death. I want you to visualize with me the painting, The Chess Players, by Friedrich Nietzsche. A young man faces the devil in a game of chess. On the board, it seems he is lost. On his face, despair is clear. He believes there is no way out. But chess experts have analyzed the scene and discovered something surprising. There is a saving move. He could win, but he doesn't see it. He doesn't see it because he is paralyzed by fear, fixated on the idea that defeat is inevitable. And this is how many live, hypnotized by the presence of death, convinced that there is nothing they can do, when in fact there is always a possible move, but it only appears to those who have the courage to face reality. Martin Heidegger called this being toward death. He believed that only when we stop fleeing from our finitude can we live authentically. While we delude ourselves with the idea that we still have plenty of time, we become trapped in what he called everydayness, a state of distraction, conformity, and repetition. It's as if we are playing a game just to delay checkmate, never attempting a bold move that could truly change the game. But, according to Heidegger, it is precisely the awareness that the game will end that gives us clarity to see the moves that matter. And here's the most ironic part. Death will come. That is inevitable. Fleeing from it changes nothing. But until then, you may have already surrendered to countless little deaths, days, months, or years, wasted in jobs you hate, relationships that add nothing, habits that only keep you numb. How many times have you refrained from doing something you wanted because it wasn't the right time? How many opportunities have you rejected because you didn't want to step out of your comfort zone? How many important conversations have you avoided because you were afraid to expose yourself? Today, I want you to face this question head-on. What paralyzes you more? Imagining the moment of your death, or imagining that you will reach the end of life and realize you never truly lived? Because only when you confront this question without fleeing, do you begin to understand what Heidegger meant when he said that the awareness of death is the key to freedom. And if you have the courage to follow me to the end, you may realize that your saving move has always been on the board, but you were too busy trying to protect yourself to see it. Have you ever noticed how society seems to conspire for you to live in a safe way? From an early age, we are taught to follow a predictable script: study, get a good job, build stability, avoid risks. The subtext is clear. Don't expose yourself. Don't challenge what is already working. Don't stray too far from the established path. This seems like prudence, but deep down, it's a trap. A silent, subtle trap. And precisely because of that, much more dangerous than any conscious risk you might take. This relentless pursuit of safety life insurance, financial stability, predictable routines, creates the illusion that we can control the uncontrollable. We believe that if we plan enough, if we are cautious enough, we can keep death at bay, or at least delay its arrival. But what we rarely realize is that in this attempt to avoid the end, we end up limiting the very beginning of everything that could make our lives worthwhile. We build walls around ourselves to protect us, and without noticing, those walls turn into bars. The problem is that this safe life isn't really safe. It's just predictable. And predictability is not synonymous with protection, it's synonymous with stagnation. It's as if we are playing a game of chess against death, and afraid to advance, we decide to only move pieces defensively, never attempting an attack. The result? We lose anyway, just more slowly. And while we postpone the inevitable, we sacrifice the intensity and authenticity of each moment. Heidegger said that when we live immersed in this mode of existence, what he called everydayness, we cease to perceive the larger game. We become so focused on keeping the board organized that we fail to notice that time is passing, and that each timid move we make is, in practice, a premature surrender. It's as if we are alive only to preserve life itself, not to live it. Think about the number of decisions you have made motivated more by the fear of losing than by the desire to win. How many times have you avoided a career change, a trip, a relationship, or even a difficult conversation because it meant giving up your apparent control over things? And here's the cruel paradox. The more we try to protect ourselves, the further we move away from what would make us feel alive. It's as if, in trying to avoid a sudden death, we are opting for a slow death. And if you think this is just a practical matter of planning or responsibility, it's because you haven't yet realized what's happening behind the scenes of your mind. The fear of dying disguises itself as prudence, but its true function is to keep you stuck in inertia. And this inertia comes at a high cost. It costs the opportunity to play your game boldly, to make moves that matter. In the next part, we will delve deeper into Martin Heidegger's thought and understand why only a direct confrontation with our finitude can radically change the way we perceive each decision we make. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. For Martin Heidegger, death is not just a biological event that happens at the end of the line. It is a constant, silent presence, shaping every choice we make, whether we are aware of it or not. In Being and Time, he introduces the concept of Sein zum Tode, or being toward death, a notion that, at first glance, may seem grim, but is actually profoundly liberating. According to him, living authentically is only possible when we confront our finitude head-on, without masks, without distractions, without fleeing into the comfortable illusions that society offers us. The problem is that most people live in what Heidegger called inauthenticity, a state in which the individual dissolves into the they, that anonymous collective that dictates how we should act, think, and feel. It is the world telling us which profession is acceptable, which lifestyle is responsible, what it means to succeed, and even what the right time is to do things. When we are in this state, our relationship with death is distant and abstract. We know it exists, but we treat it as something that happens to others far away, and not as something inevitably ours. For Heidegger, this denial is a problem because it keeps us trapped in everydayness, a repetitive life, guided by habits and conventions, where our choices do not arise from what truly matters to us, but from what is socially accepted. It is as if we are in an eternal waiting room, passing the time with distractions while pretending that the decisive moment will never arrive. But it will. Always. When we face death as a personal and imminent certainty, and not as a distant detail, something changes. The superficiality of our concerns loses its grip, What was urgent but not essential ceases to dominate our hours. And what truly matters, our relationships, our projects, our deepest desires, gains clarity and priority. It is as if the chessboard of life suddenly lights up, revealing moves that previously seemed invisible. Heidegger believed that this awareness of finitude does not paralyze us, but awakens us. By accepting that time is limited, we stop living to please the they and start living to honor our own existence. It is a call to take full responsibility for every choice, because we know that every wasted moment is a moment that will never return. And it is here that the metaphor of the painting, The Chess Players, gains even more strength. The young man will only see the saving move if he can break free from the trance of fear and face the fact that the opponent, death, is already in the game, and that ignoring it will not make it disappear. But there is a powerful obstacle that prevents us from reaching this state of clarity: the paralysis caused by fear. A fear that not only locks us up, but also distorts our view of the present, causing real opportunities to go unnoticed. This is exactly what we will explore in the next part. Fear, when unrecognized, acts as an invisible filter between us and reality. It not only limits our movements, it alters the very way we see the chessboard of life. Just like the young man in the painting, The Chess Players, who keeps his eyes fixed on the imminent defeat and cannot see the saving move, we too become blind to concrete possibilities that are right in front of us. This blindness is not the result of a lack of intelligence or opportunities, but of a psychological state in which the mind is so busy imagining the worst that there is no energy left to perceive what is possible. The fear of death, in its most subtle form, seeps into the fear of living fully. It disguises itself as prudence, rationality, even common sense. When we feel this constant anxiety, we begin to choose not what brings us closer to authentic life, but what keeps us away from any perceived risk. And here lies the trap. Every time we fail to act out of fear, we strengthen the habit of avoidance. Each escape reinforces the belief that acting is too dangerous. Over time, we can no longer distinguish whether the threat is real or just a shadow cast by our insecurities. Heidegger warned us about this phenomenon when he spoke of inauthenticity. Living in this condition, we not only flee from death, we flee from life. We come to exist in a state of pre-defeat, where our actions aim only to avoid checkmate, not to seek victory. It's as if our lives are guided by a manual of permanent self-preservation, where the priority is not to create, dare, or feel, but simply to endure. And when we endure without living, time becomes our cruelest adversary. Days turn into weeks, weeks into years, and the feeling is that everything is passing too quickly. But curiously, nothing truly significant is happening. This is the true tragedy of paralysis. It prevents us from realizing that each lost moment is not just an instant that has gone by, but a piece of our only chance to play this game. Fear does not disappear on its own. Ignoring it only makes it more powerful, and the price we pay for not confronting it is our own vision of the present. Because the present is where all moves are made. But if we are too busy looking at imaginary threats or the inevitable end, we fail to notice the piece that can change everything now. The question is, how can we transform this blinding fear into an alert that awakens us? How can we use the awareness of death to clarify the present instead of obscuring it? This is where we enter the most liberating revelation of this journey. Something that, when understood, can radically change the way you approach every move in your life. And this is exactly what we will explore in the next part. There comes a moment for those who truly decide to face their own finitude, when fear ceases to be a tormentor and transforms into a severe but just master. It is the instant when we realize that death, as inevitable as it may be, is not our greatest enemy. The true enemy is the unlived life. It is reaching the end and realizing that, even having avoided all risks, we also avoided all opportunities to feel something profound, to transform ourselves, to leave a mark. The great revelation, and here is the turning point that Heidegger points out, is that when we fully and without escape accept that death will happen, something changes in the structure of our consciousness. Suddenly, time ceases to be an indistinct flow and becomes a concrete, precious measure that demands choices. Each day gains weight, not because it is one step less until the end, but because it is a unique chance that will never repeat itself. The calendar ceases to be just a sequence of dates and becomes a reminder that the game board is always in play. This acceptance is not an invitation to live in despair or with blind haste. On the contrary, it is an invitation to presence. When we stop wasting energy fleeing from the idea of death, we gain energy to live. We begin to see what has been in front of us all along, the possible movement, the saving play. And this play is not always grand or dramatic. Often it lies in saying what you have been postponing, in starting the project you shelved, in reaching out to someone you distanced yourself from. It is as if, by accepting that the opponent has been at the table from the beginning, you finally stop playing defensively. The awareness of death, far from paralyzing, clarifies. It exposes what truly matters and eliminates the noise of what does not. It forces a question that, when taken seriously, completely changes the way you act. If I were fully certain that my time is short, would what I am about to do still be worth it? And it is at this point that we understand why so many lives remain lukewarm, because most never take the trouble to face this question with brutal honesty. We flee from it because we know that, in answering it, we will have to change. We will have to abandon the comfortable security and enter the uncertain territory where authentic life happens. The revelation is simple, yet devastating. Death does not need to be feared. What should be feared is wasting life. And when this becomes clear, fear transforms into drive. A drive to act, to choose with courage, to set aside inertia. But it is not enough to understand this intellectually. It is necessary to transform this clarity into daily practice, into concrete decisions that break the anesthesia of routine and lead us to live authentically. And it is precisely about how to make this transition from a safe and paralyzed life to a real, bold life true to oneself that we will talk about in the next part. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious gives you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. Living authentically is not an inspiring slogan to post on social media. It is a deep, demanding, and often uncomfortable commitment to your own truth. Heidegger reminds us that authenticity means taking full responsibility for being who you are. And that includes recognizing that, as time passes, you are constantly choosing how to spend the only life you have. This choice, no matter how small it may seem in day-to-day life, is what builds or destroys the experience of living fully. The path to authenticity begins with a break, breaking away from the illusion that you can please everyone, follow all advice, meet all external expectations, and still live a life true to yourself. This is impossible. The they, that anonymous mass that dictates norms and standards, will always have a list of rules for what you should or shouldn't do. Authenticity begins when you stop using that list as a criterion and start asking, does this make sense to me? Is this aligned with what I truly value? Would I choose this if I weren't afraid of disappointing or failing? But don't be fooled. Authenticity comes at a price. It requires you to give up certain comfort zones, to accept uncertainty, and to be willing to face criticism, rejection, and even loss. Living authentically often means making decisions that cannot be justified by external metrics, but are non-negotiable for your sense of integrity. It means saying no to things that everyone expects you to accept and saying yes to things that no one understands why you want to do. And here lies the irony. The more you live aligned with your truth, the less room there is for paralyzing fear. Fear still exists. It always will. But it ceases to be the master of your decisions and becomes just a voice you hear, recognize, and choose to ignore. You realize that the pain of living against yourself is infinitely greater than any risk of failure. Heidegger saw this stance as the only genuine way to honor being toward death, living each moment as a conscious expression of who you are, knowing that time is finite. It is not about seeking incessant adventures or living in a state of constant excitement, but about ensuring that the choices you make, from the grandest to the simplest, are aligned with the life you want, not with the life that they expect you to have. And this is the most transformative part. When you start to act from this awareness, the saving move ceases to be a rare event and becomes a habit. You begin to see movements that were previously invisible because your vision is no longer clouded by the need for approval or the terror of loss. But there is still one piece missing to complete this reflection. Understanding that, as much as authenticity is an individual choice, the risk of wasting life remains constant, and that the worst defeat does not happen on the day of death, but along the way, when we surrender to inertia without realizing it. This is what we will discuss in the conclusion. We have reached the final point of this conversation, but not the final point of reflection. Because if there is something that this journey alongside Heidegger and the metaphor of the chess players has shown us, it is that the greatest tragedy is not dying. It is going through life as if we were merely waiting for the end without ever having truly played. Death is inevitable. Authentic life is not. It requires decision. It requires courage. It requires you, in front of the board of your existence, to choose whether to move the pieces with fear or with purpose. Perhaps, throughout this video, you have remembered moments when you held back, not due to a lack of ability, but because fear spoke louder. Moments when you could have made a decisive move, but chose to stay safe, protected, and in doing so, gave up the chance to change the course of the game. This is the reality that few have the courage to face. Every choice of safety is also a choice of renunciation, and there is no neutrality. When you do not decide for yourself, someone or something decides for you. Heidegger invites us not to postpone this confrontation. The awareness of death is not a burden. It is a magnifying lens that reveals what matters and exposes what is irrelevant. It forces us to act, not because we have infinite time, but precisely because we do not. And it is in this paradox that life gains intensity. Knowing it will end is what frees us to live it without reservations. Now the question is, what will you do with this clarity? Will you let it dissolve in the comfort of everyday life, returning to the same routines and justifications? Or will you use it as a call to change, to make the move you have been avoiding, to acknowledge that life is too short to be wasted on moves that do not matter? This answer no one can give for you, but if you decide to act, you will realize that the game was never lost. You just didn't have the courage to face the board head-on. If something in this video made you think, if any part of this reflection stirred you, I want you to comment below what the move is that you know you need to make now. You don't need to go into details if you don't want to, but declare to yourself and to the world that you will no longer play defensively. And don't stop here. Keep watching the next video because it is important, perhaps as important as this one. The game is happening. It's time to play. I'll see you there.